In the 1990s, Rugrats was a cultural phenomenon that captivated audiences with its creative take on childhood through the perspective of toddlers. It was considered the golden goose for Nickelodeon as it went on to become one of the most iconic animated series of all time. It launched movies, merchandise, and of course video games. The most notable games starring Tommy and the gang were Rugrats Search for Reptar, Rugrats in Paris, Rugrats Royal Ransom, and lots more. The games had elements of platforming and puzzle solving while maintaining the charm and presentation that we would see on Nickelodeon. What's interesting is that these games were released during the later half of the show's airing, while during the early years, other cartoons from Nickelodeon were given games during the 8 and 16-bit era, such as Rocko's Modern Life, All Real Monsters, and Ren and Stimpy. I often think about how a Rugrats game would have worked during the era of the NES, the Super NES, or the Sega Genesis. Then, out of nowhere in 2023, it was announced that a new game was being made starring the babies from Nickelodeon that looks to be a game straight from the 8-bit era. In this video, I'll be taking a look at the good, the bad, and the in-between of the 8-bit platformer from developer MIX Games, starring those little tots from Nickelodeon. So sit back and hang on to your diapies, babies, as we enter the world of Rugrats Adventures in Gameland. The game has a simple plot. Angelica once again bossing the babies around when they see a commercial, starting with a Susie Carmichael cameo, of a new Reptar video game. This inspires the babies to collect Reptar coins that are scattered across the house to open the Reptar door. At first glance, this 2D platformer looks straight out of the cartoon with its visuals and animation. However, one of the biggest features of the game is that you could switch between the HD graphics that closely resembles the show, or switch to the 8-bit mode that looks straight out of the NES. What some don't know is that the game was originally built for the original NES hardware, and it definitely shows from the graphics to the gameplay. You play as the 4 main babies. Each of them have the same movesets of jumping, crawling, lifting, and ground pound. However, each of them have different stats and abilities. Tommy is well balanced, Chucky is the high jumper, Phil is the strong lifter, and Lil has the ability to float. Basically Super Mario Bros. 2, or Doki Doki Panic in Japan, with the ability to swap between characters that could be strategic in certain levels. Like for example, if there's a place too high to reach with Tommy, you could swap him with Chucky. Or if you don't feel confident in a jump you're about to make, you could use Lil to float and could give you some relief. Each character has the ability to jump on enemies, and in some cases can be stunned, which can give you the chance to pick them up and throw them to another enemy similar to Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers back in 1990. The game also has a 2-player co-op mode which allows friends and family to play together just like the good old days and can add some replayability. Your health is determined by a gauge that when taking damage, removes a portion of it, and when the gauge is empty, you're defeated, and you play as a different character. But when all 4 babies lose, you go back to the stage select screen. There are several items to collect such as extra milk bottles to refill your health and cookies that give you an extra bottle. The game includes 3 difficulties: easy, normal, and hard. The main objective of each level is to find Reptar coins and the screwdriver, which is necessary to unlock the gate towards the boss. Each level ends with facing a boss, which are callbacks from the show, such as the giant Mr. Tippy, the dummy bears, to even the big baby from Angelica's Nightmare that one episode. That's actually one of the main aspects when going through these levels. You find callbacks and references to not just the show, but the franchise of Rugrats as a whole. They can range from stuff in the background to even some enemies. Especially for those who grew up watching the show, you could try to find as many references as you can. The music in the game has some catchy tunes, and you could swap out to listen to either the 8-bit or the HD versions of the tracks. The chiptune tracks remind me of soundtracks from games such as Mega Man 2 or DuckTales. Now the issue I have with this game is that it is incredibly short and can't be completed in about an hour, and it really doesn't provide much of a challenge as the NES games that was inspired from. The bosses are mainly predictable as the paths to defeating them are pretty much rinse and repeat. In some aspects of the platforming, especially in the HD mode, can be a bit tedious, as some jumps don't really connect, but when switching to 8-bit mode, it connects with no problem. So with all that being said, Rugrats Adventures in Gameland captures 2 sides of nostalgia: the curious world of Rugrats that we know and love from Nickelodeon, and the pixelated appeal of the classics from the NES. With its solid platforming, creative presentation, and enjoyable soundtrack, it is a love letter to fans of not only the cartoon, but retro gaming as a whole. It may be too easy and short, but its nostalgic experience will be accessible to fans old and new. Earlier I mentioned how a Rugrats game would work in the early 90s during the NES era. Well, I could safely say that Mix Games answer that question, as I feel if it was released during the NES era, it would likely get talked about today as often as those Disney games from Capcom like DuckTales, Chip 'n Dale, and so on, as some of the best NES games of all time. Rugrats Adventures in Gameland is a solid tribute to the best of both retro gaming and childhood memories that can last a lifetime. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications.